Hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. Today we're going to address the question of how much land do I need to raise enough chicken for my family for the whole year. So let's get into that. So bear with me as I do my daily chicken chores for our Cornish cross as we discuss this. So I know a lot of the viewers that watch our channel from the feedback that I've gotten that there may be some of you or a good bit of you that are not yet homesteading, or you're getting ready to, or you're just in the process of looking for land. And these questions just seem to keep popping up. And I wanted to do this video to help kind of tear down this idea that you need acres and acres and acres of land to have a modern homestead, to be able to be more self-reliant and to raise most of your own food, at least most of your protein. So I wanted to be able to do this to address that you don't need a whole bunch of land to do this. And we use our example here, how we do it on our place, to illustrate what I'm trying to say. Now there are obviously tons of variables that go into really determining this, but I think we can break it down to look at some main ones, and then that will help you determine, do your own math, figure out your own situation there. So here at Red Tool House, we like to raise in one batch enough chickens to feed us for the entire year, our family of 4, and provide extra birds to sell to our customers, and that kind of helps offset the feed costs. In fact, if I do it right, then the sale of the birds covers all my feed costs, everything except my labor, and so I kind of have free food to some degree. So that's that first variable I have to figure out. How many birds do I need for a year to provide chicken for my family? We're a family of 4. If you're a family of 10, that's probably going to be a little bit higher. If you're just 2 of you or 1 person, then that could be a little lower. So what I factor in, just basic math, is of course 1 chicken a week. We don't normally do that, but that's just a good metric to go by. So that's 52 birds for the full year, and we raise out roughly 100. So if I sell, another 50 or 40 some, then that's where that sweet spot is. Now another variable that we won't really get into on this video is, of course, type of bird. We're talking Cornish cross here. That's what we like to use. That's what we've had the most luck with. And of course the fact that they have a total life cycle of 8 weeks. So that's going to be a big determinant. If you're going to go longer on the life cycle of whatever bird you choose, then that's going to affect your land usage as well. And of course another key factor in determining this is based upon how you're going to raise them. Are you going to raise them on pasture, or are you going to run them in a coop with a small run? We've discovered when it comes to broiler chicken, especially Cornish cross, it does so much better when you put them on pasture. And we like to use the tractor method. So you can see our 3 tractors there. We use the Siskovich model tractor instead of Joel Salatin's bigger tractor, simply because we don't have as much level land. So the bigger a footprint is on a tractor, the more you have a chance of having gaps underneath that critters can get in. These little 6x10s work well in the sense that they don't have a big footprint, thus having uneven ground be an issue. So of course some of the benefits in running in a tractor on pasture, there's actually a lot, but the ones that really jump out to me is, hey, I think the birds, you just get a better quality bird. They taste better because they have an eclectic diet. They are not standing in their own filth, so it makes a healthier bird. You kind of break a parasite cycle. You get them out of that, move on to another spot. And of course it really improves soil health. The amount of manure they leave behind really supercharges your ground. And if you do it well and you don't have a lot of runoff, then you can really get some great quality soil improvement from it. Okay, so to determine our land needs, we're going to do some basic math. In our situation here, 100 birds approximately. I think I'm about 97 right now, actually. 100 birds approximately, 3 tractors, that their footprint is 6x10. So we take those numbers along with the life cycle of the Cornish cross. Now, I mentioned 8 weeks. What we do is 2 to 4 weeks in the brooder, so that's time that's not spent on pasture, and then the final 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks on pasture. This year, because we had such a cool spring, the birds are actually in a brooder situation for 4 weeks. Actually, that last week, the 3rd week, we put them in the greenhouse because they were outgrowing the brooder. but it was still too cold. We were getting down below freezing at night. It was still too cold to put the birds out on pasture. So we put them in the greenhouse with some of our egg layer chickens so they could hang out there, still warm, have some better shelter. So we only have 4 weeks on pasture, so that's 28 days. So 28 days, 6 by 10 footprint, and the number of birds. All that factors in here. So with 28 days and 3 tractors, I move each tractor every day. So 1 day equals 1 move, so that's 10 linear feet, technically, is what I need for each move. So if you do the math on that, let me get my calculator here, make sure I put my notes down right. So that's 10 feet a day, and a 6 by 10, the total number of square footage that I need per tractor is 1,680 square feet. For 3 tractors total, we add that up, that's 5,040 square feet, which is roughly just under 1/8 of an acre. So technically, I only need 1/8 of an acre, but it's not like I'm picking up these tractors and literally moving them in a grid pattern, that they're a perfect 6 by 10 each time. There's some spoilage, if you will, of pasture that goes untouched. Can you pick out the spots where the chicken tractor wasn't? Yes, looks like crop circles or crop geometry here. So not exactly 6 by 10, of course, because the displacement, the uneven ground, just me being lazy and not trying to line them up exactly, doesn't mean I'm exactly consuming 5,000 square feet. So this pasture area you see behind me is roughly 1/4 of an acre, my best estimation. Since it's West Virginia, it's tough to actually factor in. Excluding the creek, of course, and excluding the side of the mountain that goes up to the house. So this is a little over 200 feet long. In fact, where I'm standing makes it longer than 200 feet. But it's 50 feet wide on average. At the end, as you go back up the watershed there, it gets much narrower than 50 feet, but down here it's 75 to 80 feet. So rough estimation is about 1/4 of an acre. Now I know from experience, if I start right here by this watershed, right behind the side-by-side, started right there, that 3 tractors side by side, that if I go all the way up this meadow, turn around and come all the way back on this side, so I'm not overlapping, then I can easily get 28 days worth of moves. I've actually done as many as, I think 38 maybe, moves, and not cover the same ground twice. So I've got plenty of room here to do this, and that really doesn't even take into consideration like some of these odd spots where there's a little bit of slope here around my foam pole, those type of things. I could get maybe 6-7 days out of those spots if I wanted to be kind of crafty and lily pad or leapfrog those tractors. Not ideal for the chickens, of course. Now I mentioned I don't overlap, and I don't think that's necessarily a hill that you absolutely die on. If you look at what Joel Salatin writes about it a lot, obviously this guy has been doing chicken tractors forever, but he refuses to go over the same land twice in one season simply because of nitrogen runoff. Worried about an overload of nitrogen from the chicken manure, heavy rain runs off, gets into the water system, gets into the ponds, obviously builds up algae, all that kind of stuff. So that's why he doesn't do it. That's something you're just going to have to monitor on your own property. But you know, obviously the pro of overlapping is you need even less land. So that 1/8 of an acre, you could go down maybe 20, 30%, maybe 50%. But the thing you got to watch is this. Let me show you. So where the tractors are now is day 6. We just moved on the 6th day. So this is where we started. So 6 days out, you can see there's still a whole bunch of manure buildup. In fact, there's so much manure, it's going to take a while. It's several weeks for this to really get soaked in, for the grass to recover. You really want to see the grass come back nice. You start to turn that dark green. Maybe there's tiny little chunks of manure you can see from here to there, but usually you want it all soaked in. So that's the only problem. If you end up saying, well, I'm only going to use 1/16 of an acre or whatever small space, and you find yourself overlapping, you may come back around too soon and introduce your chickens to their own manure load and have the issues associated with that, and you're not allowing the grass to recover either. So you can see here in this situation, on 1/4 of an acre, I can easily run 100 birds. Now that's just out of an 8-week window for an entire season. So you could find, depending on what you're dealing with, if you have more land where you can rotate through, you may be able to get multi-use out of this quarter acre, an eighth of an acre that you need to produce this many chickens. So you just have to see what your setup looks like. Now, quality of grass is going to be a determinant there as well. You know, the better the grass quality, the better product you get. But the neat thing about this is the more you run them, the better the grass quality is going to be, as long as you don't overstress the ground. So really, it's pretty simple to determine how much land you need to raise enough chickens to feed your family for an entire year. You just need 3 key points, actually. You need to know the number of chickens you want to raise for that entire year. You need to know the footprint of your tractors, however you're going to contain them. And you need to determine the number of days you want to have them on pasture. So footprint times the number of days gives you the square footage. You just have to make sure the number of birds you want fit in the number of tractors that you plan on constructing or using. So I mentioned earlier about not overstressing your ground, and I want to give a really obvious example of how that happens. So if you all have been watching the channel for a while, you may remember that this area was where we did I call it an experiment, but we had our big coop. In fact, the boys just finished tearing that down. The coop finally gave up the ghost. So the floor deck is still there. We got to get it out. But used to be a big coop there that had 2 10,000 square foot pastures that we were rotating the chickens on. And that worked great in the summertime, but what I discovered is when I overwintered them, they just destroyed it. And they would literally scratch up every single thing, all the roots, everything. So there was not anything left. So when we decided to punt on that, we didn't want to have, that was egg laying chickens. We decided to punt on that process, and now we've moved on to our mobile coop. You can see here, this line I'm standing on. Yeah, I think it's showing up in the camera. This side was not part of the chicken pasture. This side was part of the chicken pasture. So we've got really nice tall hay grass that's growing here. In fact, I had to weed eat it so I could get the chicken tractors through, versus this scruffy stuff. And in here is a lot, I mean a ton of creeping Charlie and some other weeds, even some thistle, and there's some grass. Some of the broadleaf they do like, but you know, that creeping Charlie only goes so far with a chicken. While the soil quality may be good because we had the chickens in there that long, the actual ground cover is pretty nasty. So this year I'm going to see how well they till it up, and if they don't do too good a job, then this fall I may till it up and reseed my own. We'll just see how it goes. So keep that in mind. If you overlap your land with your chicken tractors too much, then they could end up damaging your pasture instead of making it better. And one other quick side note about how to raise Cornish cross. Again, you don't have to raise them on pasture. You can do a coop with a run, and you can actually bring the pasture to them utilizing a fodder system. Now, I've never done that with Cornish cross or even broiler chickens, but that's something we're actually going to experiment with, hopefully later this year, with a new coop we're building up behind the house at our garden. And that'll be for egg-laying chickens. It'll be a small egg-laying flock. And we're going to take advantage of a stationary coop with a run on slope that will be full of wood chips, you know, that carbaceous diaper, as Joel Saladin calls it, to capture a lot of that manure. But the runoff, we want to manage and control that runoff to come down and be caught in a large collection area at the base of the garden, where there'll be a lot of carbon, a lot of wood chips there. So we're hoping that we can get those guys to be pooping, doing their thing, living the best life. All their manure runs off into our wood chips, which then becomes a compost generating machine. And I got that idea from Edible Acres up in New York. I've been enjoying their channel for quite a while, and I really like his composting system. He doesn't use slope because he's on flat land, but that concept of the chickens making the compost. So that's what we want to do. We want to take full advantage of the fact that we've got tons of this all over the place, these steep hillsides. So when we put a chicken, it won't be that steep, but it'll be a grassy area there. The chickens will be able to hang out, do that. And we'll produce, obviously we'll give them feed, but we'll also produce fodder. So we've got a fodder system we'll build, and we'll detail all of that later this year, hopefully. All right, well, I appreciate everybody watching. Take care.